In 2023, a team of Egyptian archaeologists was doing a routine ground-penetrating scan beneath the Great Sphinx. They had done this hundreds of times before. But at exactly 9.1 meters below the surface, their equipment detected something. A cavity, large, rectangular, and perfectly smooth on all four sides. The cavity detected in 2023 measures approximately 9 meters by 5 meters, roughly the size of a large room. Its walls are straight, its floor appears level. Natural formations under the Sphinx are round and irregular. This one is not. Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's former antiquities minister, confirmed the anomaly exists, but stated, "We have not yet determined what it is or how to access it safely." As of the time this documentary was made, it has still not been opened. This is the Sphinx. It is 4,500 years old, and somewhere inside it, or beneath it, is a room. A room that was built, a room that was sealed, a room that has never, in 45 centuries of human history, been opened. These are not theories. These are objects. In museums, sitting in glass cases that nobody can explain. And for the next 2 hours, we are going to look at every single one of them and ask the question that archaeologists refuse to answer in public. Where did they come from? Archaeologists at one of these sites found something so strange they called their government. Their government called the military, and then everyone stopped talking about it. I want you to forget everything you think you know about the pyramids. Forget the postcards, forget the movies. Forget everything your history teacher told you. Because we are going to look at the Great Pyramid the way an engineer looks at it, with numbers. And the numbers are going to change the way you see this thing forever. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north to within 0.05 of a degree. The best GPS satellites available today achieve the same accuracy. The pyramid stones were placed at the rate of 1 every 2 minutes, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, for 20 years. Not one block was placed in the wrong position. Not one. I have spent 40 years asking one question. How? Not why. How? How do you cut granite to a tolerance of 1/10,000th of an inch with copper tools? The answer is, you cannot. You physically cannot. And yet there it sits, in the king's chamber. You can go measure it yourself today. In 1978, a team of Japanese engineers tried to build a replica of the Great Pyramid. They had helicopters, cranes, concrete trucks, modern steel tools. They couldn't finish it. The project was abandoned. The 1/11th scale replica never completed. Meanwhile, the original has stood for 4,500 years. In a desert, through earthquakes, without a single repair. But the stones aren't even the strangest part of the Great Pyramid. There's something inside, something they found in 1993 that the Egyptian government has never let anyone touch. In 1993, a robotic camera was sent into a narrow shaft inside the pyramid. A shaft so small, a human being cannot fit inside it. The camera crawled for 65 meters, and then it found a door. A stone door with metal handles. Nobody knew the door was there. Nobody had mapped it. Nobody had planned for it. And the question that the entire archaeological world immediately asked was, what is on the other side? In 2002, a second robot was sent through the shaft and drilled a small hole in the door. A fiber optic camera was pushed through. It found another door. Behind the first sealed door was a small chamber, and then another door. In 2011, a third robot explored the chamber and found what appeared to be hieroglyphics on the floor. The Egyptian authorities then suspended all further exploration. As of 2024, no human being has entered this chamber. No explanation for the sealed design has been given by any official body. Here is what nobody tells you about the pyramid shafts. They point to specific stars, but not the stars that were visible in 2500 BCE. They point to where those stars were 8,000 years earlier. The stars move. Not quickly, but they move. Over thousands of years, the sky itself shifts in a pattern called the precession of the equinoxes. Astronomers have calculated where every star was at every point in history, and when they pointed the southern shaft of the king's chamber backward through time, they found its perfect alignment. Not in 2500 BCE, not in 3000 BCE, in 10,500 BCE. 8,000 years before the pyramid was supposedly built. The three pyramids of Giza. They are not in a straight line. They are not in a perfect triangle. One of them is slightly offset. For 200 years, archaeologists assumed this was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. The offset exactly matches the offset of Mintaka, the smallest star in Orion's belt, from the other two stars, as it appeared in 10,500 BCE. They weren't building tombs. They were building a map of the sky. So who taught the ancient Egyptians where Orion's belt was in 10,500 BCE, 8,000 years before they were born? That question has one answer that makes sense, and nobody wants to say it. Egypt is not the anomaly. Egypt is just the one we've paid the most attention to. Because here's what nobody's textbook shows you. At the same time the Egyptians were building the pyramid, on the other side of the planet, people who had never met them were doing the same impossible things. And in some cases, doing things the Egyptians couldn't. In the next section, we go to a site in Bolivia, where the stones have drill holes that were made by a technology we do not possess today. In Bolivia, there's a site where the stones were cut with a precision that modern diamond-tipped drill bits cannot replicate. We know because engineers tried. Pumapunku, Bolivia. 12,500 feet above sea level. The air is so thin here that walking between these stones leaves you breathless. But the people who built this place weren't breathless. They were precise. What you are looking at right now are the scattered remains of a structure that was, by all evidence, the most technically advanced building ever constructed on this planet. By people who, according to the official record, had no wheels, no iron tools, no written language, and no reason to be here. These holes were drilled through diorite. Diorite scores 8.5 on the Mohs hardness scale. Diamond is a 10. To drill through diorite today, we use diamond-tipped tungsten carbide drill bits, spinning at 3,000 revolutions per minute under massive hydraulic pressure. And when modern engineers attempted to replicate these exact holes, their drill bits wore down and broke before the holes were complete. The people who made these holes drilled dozens of them, all identical, all perfect, with tools that, by current scientific consensus, did not exist. What troubles me most isn't the drill holes, or the weight of the stones, or even the age. What troubles me is the H-blocks. Every H-block at this site is geometrically identical. Each one interlocks perfectly with the others. The precision is consistent across hundreds of separate pieces. That is not craft. That is not artisanship. That is industrial manufacturing. And we have no model, none, for how that happened here, at this altitude, at this time. The H-shaped blocks at Pumapunku are each cut to the same geometry with sub-millimeter consistency. Archaeologist and engineer Scott Creighton measured multiple H-blocks and found the deviation between them to be less than 0.5 millimeters across pieces weighing several tons each. Modern prefabricated concrete construction typically allows a tolerance of plus or minus 3 millimeters. These stone blocks, cut thousands of years ago, are 6 times more precise than modern concrete manufacturing. Now here's what really makes engineers uncomfortable. The site at Pumapunku was destroyed, not by time, by an explosion. The blast radius and debris scatter pattern are consistent with a single, catastrophic detonation. Drive 3 hours from Pumapunku. Cross the Andes. Descend to the coastal desert. And you will find something that, for 2,000 years, nobody even knew existed. Not because it was hidden, not because it was small, but because the only way to see it is from an airplane. And aircraft weren't invented until 1903. Among all the Nazca figures, there is one that archaeologists have officially classified as, quote, a human figure. It has a large, round, domed head. It has what appears to be a visor over its face. It has only 2 toes on each foot. It has one hand raised, pointing at the sky. Archaeologists say it represents a local shaman or deity. I will show you the image, and you can decide for yourself what it looks like. The Nazca lines cover 450 square kilometers. The people who made them vanished. No descendants, no ruins, no explanation, just the lines. And if you look closely at some of them, they look like runways. In 1994, a Kurdish farmer was plowing his field in Turkey. He moved a stone out of the way, and underneath it was another stone. Cut, shaped, carved. He kept digging. When archaeologists arrived and began a formal excavation, what they found rewrote every textbook in existence. Göbekli Tepe, 12,000 years old, predating Stonehenge by 7,000 years, predating agriculture itself by 1,000 years. The greatest mystery in the history of human civilization. And you have almost certainly never heard of it. Before Göbekli Tepe was discovered, the academic consensus was agriculture leads to surplus, leads to cities, leads to religion, leads to monumental architecture. You need food surpluses to free up workers. You need cities to organize large-scale labor. Göbekli Tepe was built before agriculture, before cities, before any of the preconditions that were supposed to be necessary. Its builders were hunter-gatherers, people we assumed were purely focused on day-to-day survival. Instead, they organized what appears to be thousands of workers across multiple decades to build a complex of monuments of extraordinary sophistication. Then they buried it, on purpose, and left. Here's the part of Göbekli Tepe's story that doesn't make the news. It was deliberately buried around 8000 BCE. And in the exact same soil layer where it was buried, scientists found cosmic impact debris from a comet strike that matches the date of the Great Flood stories in every culture on Earth. Someone buried Göbekli Tepe. Not time, not erosion. People. They brought soil from outside the site. They systematically filled every enclosure. They covered every pillar, every carving, every monument. And then they left. In the same soil layer, scientists found it. Nanodiamonds, shocked quartz, platinum concentrations, the fingerprints of a comet impact dated to 10,900 BCE, the same date as the global flood, the same date as the end of the Ice Age, the same date as the collapse of something we haven't named yet. A tribe in Mali. With no telescopes, no modern astronomy, knew that Sirius was a binary star system with an invisible companion that takes 50 years to orbit. Astronomers didn't confirm this until 1862. The tribe says they learned it from beings who came from Sirius. In 1931, French anthropologist Marcel Griaule traveled to Mali to study the Dogon people. Isolated, remote, no electricity, no telescopes. The Dogon told him about Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. They told him it had a companion star, invisible to the naked eye, extremely dense, that completed one orbit of Sirius every 50 years. The first astronomers to detect this star were using a 36-inch refracting telescope in 1862. The first photograph of it wasn't taken until 1970. The Dogon have known about it for centuries. And when Griaule asked them how, they told him, "Beings from Sirius taught us." The orbital mechanics of Sirius B are exactly as the Dogon described. The density, the orbit period, the relationship with Sirius A, correct. What is not explainable to me as a scientist is how this knowledge was obtained without instrumentation. There is no conventional explanation. I am not saying the unconventional explanation is correct. I am saying the conventional explanation does not exist. 3,000 years before the Wright brothers, the Vedic texts of ancient India described machines called vimanas. The Vaimanika Shastra describes their construction in technical detail. Mercury vortex engines, gyroscopic stabilization, materials resistant to heat and lightning, the ability to become invisible, the ability to hear conversations at a distance. In 1895, 8 years before the Wright brothers, an Indian scholar named Shivkar Bapuji Talpade built a craft based on Vedic descriptions. Witnesses reported it flew to an altitude of 1,500 feet. No one funded a second attempt. No one could explain how a text written in 400 BCE knew what the inside of a gyroscope looked like. 6 different ancient civilizations, with no contact between them, all describe this same thing. Beings who came from the sky, taught them, and left. In a moment, we will show you the cave paintings, and you will see them for yourself. 6 civilizations. No contact. No shared language. No shared religion. The same large heads. The same rounded helmets. The same figures descending from the sky. The conventional explanation is that these are religious figures, shamans, gods, spirits. And that may be correct. But I want you to ask yourself a single question as you look at these images. If someone from another world landed in your village and you had no frame of reference for what you were seeing, what would you call them? You would call them gods. Here is a question that no scientist has answered. Why do all these cave paintings show beings with round helmets, when round helmets are aerodynamically useless for a terrestrial environment? You only need a round, sealed helmet in one situation: in space. The Sumerians of Mesopotamia were the first civilization to develop writing. 3,400 years before Christ. And in their very first written records, the very first things they chose to write down, they described beings they called the Anunnaki. Beings who came from the sky, taught them agriculture, taught them mathematics, taught them astronomy, established their laws, built their cities, and then departed. The Sumerians did not describe them as gods of wind or rain. They described them as beings with physical bodies who ate food, needed air to breathe, and arrived in vehicles. When you map every major ancient site onto a globe and connect them with straight lines, they form a perfect geometric grid. The mathematics of this grid encode the Earth's circumference to within 0.1% accuracy. That calculation wasn't made official until 1687. In the 1970s, 3 Soviet researchers, Nikolai Goncharov, Vyacheslav Moroz, and Valery Makarov, plotted every major ancient site onto a globe. What emerged was a grid, a perfect geometric grid, dividing the Earth's surface into equal sections, encoded with the mathematics of phi, the golden ratio, accurate to within 0.1% of the Earth's actual circumference. The ancient builders didn't just choose their sites for local reasons. They chose them because of where they sat on the surface of a sphere. A sphere whose exact measurements they somehow already knew. How do you measure a sphere from the inside of it, without satellites, without aircraft, without GPS, to within 0.1% accuracy? Phi, the golden ratio, 1.618, appears in the Great Pyramid's geometry. The ratio of its base half to its height equals phi. It appears in the Parthenon, in the Fibonacci spiral structure of the Nazca spider, in the astronomical alignment intervals of Stonehenge. Phi is the mathematical ratio of natural growth, found in plant spirals, galaxy arms, and DNA structure. The fact that ancient builders used it as a unifying design principle across all sites is either the greatest coincidence in architectural history or evidence of a shared design source. In 2021, the United States Department of Defense officially released footage of unidentified aerial phenomena captured by U.S. Navy pilots. The objects in the footage accelerate from stationary to hypersonic in under a second, move against the wind with no visible propulsion, dive into the ocean and emerge without damage, make right-angle turns at thousands of miles per hour. The official government statement, quote, "We cannot identify what these objects are or explain their performance characteristics." End quote. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the United States government in 2021 saying, "We don't know what that is." The ancients said they came from the sky. Now the US government agrees that something comes from the sky. The only question left is it the same thing? And in the final act, we found something that might answer that question. What if you wanted to send a message to the future, but you didn't know what language they would speak? You'd use math. You'd use geometry. You'd build something so precisely mathematical that any civilization advanced enough to measure it would decode the message. The Great Pyramid is the message, and we just figured out what it says. The perimeter of the Great Pyramid, divided by twice its height, gives you pi to 4 decimal places. The height of the pyramid, multiplied by 10 to the power of 9, gives you the distance from the Earth to the Moon, accurate to 0.01%. The base side of the pyramid, multiplied by 43,200, gives you the Earth's polar circumference. The number 43,200 is not random. It is the number of seconds in 12 hours, 1/2 rotation of the Earth. The pyramid encodes pi, the distance to the Moon, and the size of the Earth in a single stone structure. Someone wanted us to know that they knew these things. The consistent encoding of the Earth's dimensions in ancient monuments across cultures that had no known contact suggests a common source of advanced geodetic knowledge. Whether that source was a previous terrestrial civilization, an external intelligence, or something else entirely, we cannot say with certainty. What we can say is that the knowledge exists in the stones. It has been waiting for us, and we are now just barely advanced enough to read it. Consider everything we have seen. Impossible engineering in stone. Astronomical knowledge encoded in architecture. Ancient texts describing flying machines with technical specifications. Cave paintings on 6 continents showing the same beings in the same round helmets. A global grid of monuments encoding the Earth's own dimensions to within 0.1% accuracy. And now, our own government confirming that something is in our skies that we cannot explain. Here is what I believe, not as a journalist, not as a filmmaker, as a human being who has looked at this evidence. Someone was here before us. They left us a library built in stone because stone doesn't burn. And in that library is everything we need to know about where we came from and where we are going. We began tonight with a cavity beneath the Sphinx, a room sealed for 4,500 years. We still don't know what's in it. We still don't know who sealed it. We still don't know why they sealed it. But we know this: whoever built the Great Pyramid encoded the distance to the moon in its height, encoded the circumference of the Earth in its base, aligned its shafts to stars from 10,000 years in their past. These were not people who did things by accident. Everything at Giza, everything, was deliberate. Which means that room beneath the Sphinx is also deliberate. Something was put in there. Something was meant to be found. In 2024, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities applied for a ground-penetrating radar survey of the full Sphinx interior. The application is still pending. When they open that room, and they will, Part 2 of this documentary is ready. There are 3 kinds of knowledge: what is known, what is unknown, and what is beneath the Sphinx. They knew about the third kind,